Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, Blind Woman's Curse from 1970. Blind Woman's Curse is the original cover art for this. I bought this. This is Arrow, puts this out on Blu-ray and DVD. This is the back right here. Picked this up at a sale, 50% off. Blind Woman's Curse, and you can see on the front there a staple of the Stray Cat Rock series, which I've already reviewed in this YouTube page, Miss Miko Kaji, and I hope I'm really pronouncing her name correctly, Miko Kaji, and Blind Woman's Curse. This is a film that mashes up the genres. It is a period type of a period piece in the Asian world. And even though it was made in 1970, the same year as the Stray Cat Rock series, this is not a film that takes place in 1970 visually and story-wise. It is a film that goes way back, and you can see from the outfits here on the front, from the wrappings and the hair. This does not have that 70s exploitation, fast cars, her big black hat type of fare for this film. Regardless, this is a film that mashes up genres in a shockingly interesting manner. We have interesting genres being mixed in here, the horror and the bizarre, psychosexual, martial arts, and you can see that this is really an influence on Tarantino, these films in general, but this film and this actress Miko Kaji, definitely, especially the opening sequence of the film. For some reason, I just felt that when linking that to Kill Bill or something. Even though Tarantino has used her own music in Kill Bill as well. This film has a blind woman, as the title says, a curse, as the title says, but now more than that, a cat that haunts, the cravings for blood, a freak show, a hunchback, wild, violent deaths, blood, torture in water torture, submersion and drowning. We have attempted rape. We have a severed head that gets utilized in interesting ways. We have tattoos that take on other significance and that fit the puzzles of other people's backs. And we have skin grafting in this film, murderous skin grafting, very bizarre sideshows and weird baby dolls that are being cooked in pans. This is a very, very interesting film, so let's get into it. First and foremost, the music of the film. The music of the film really lets you know that something alternatively is going on here with this movie. You might be watching this film, you see the big swords, you see the outfits, and you say, this is going to be a really cool martial arts type film. Well, until you see a curse, you see the word goddamn in the subtitles, and you say, okay, it's a little edgy. And then you see some blood fly, and you're like, oh, that's a little edgy too. What the hell's going on here? And then more and more starts to erupt. But the music really hits at home. Because it's dark, it's eerie, and there's even these cues that sound like old horror films. So it has this dark vibe about it that you would not normally hear in an older martial arts film. So this, you can tell, is going well beyond that into some other territory here. So it has a horror score to me in many regards, with some horror cues, old horror cues, almost exploitative horror cues, and the music was unnerving at times and dark and sinister. Cinematography wise, of course, we have reverse zooms and zooms right into people's faces, in particular Miko Kaji. We have slow motion, and the title sequence is really this wildly violent freeze frame slow motion sequence. And then we have
a very subtle panning of shots, and also we have a very high energy in the contrast to those slow shots, because the film can have places of heavy dialogue and suspense, and then it has places of high insane energy in violence or in the disturbingly bizarre and surreal as well. The camera and the style of this film is picking up the surreal, the bizarre, the violent, the sexual, the otherworldly nightmare nature of the film, and also the drama of the film. This is a film also that has pretty interesting cuts in the editing room, where just as abrasive as the mix of genres and insanity and bizarreness of the storyline, you could almost call this a bizarro film, the bizarreness of the storyline, such are the edits, just as abrasive. You know, you'll go from this really weird, what the hell am I watching section of film, all of a sudden to something very normal, two people talking. And you're wondering what just happened. And it might go back to that later on. So it's very, very interesting how it worked those realms. You know, violently speaking, I mean, this is not that modern type of martial arts, you know, bloody films where geysers are coming out and things like that. But there's a great deal of blood in almost a geyser, especially in the death near the end of the film. We have really shockingly violent, and when I say violent, I don't mean gory, I mean really violently disturbing stabbing, and very realistic, and blood flow. I mean, this is a violently dark film. It doesn't happen throughout the entire film, but it happens. And then there's some disturbing things, you know, with dead bodies in this film, a coffin car, and a woman hanging, and you know, severed limbs, and those severed limbs being utilized in a costumed type of way. Very viciously bizarre characters in this film, being the villains. Now this is a film that has crime gangs, crime bosses. So set in the 70s, this would be a completely different type of film. But being a period piece, you still have the crime lords and the crime bosses and the different gangs, but it's this is not your 70s exploitation Yakuza film, okay? And with the sexuality of the film, I mean, we have this underlying sexuality that's seemingly perverse, especially with the variety of the villainous characters in this film, in regards to a traveling freak show of sorts. We also have some very bizarre dialogue involving scents and smells that are constantly repeated throughout the film. The smells, and this man in a thong, and the smells of his lower regions, and the women in kind of a slavery ring, and the sexual prostitution, forced prostitution with drugs. We have drugs in this film as well, presumably opium, and there is a lot of wildness. There's some hallucinatory sequences in the film, and as well there is just beautiful shots of the countryside. Now, this is rural. This is not city. We have a character in this film who is a hunchback of sorts, who really elevates this film into a surreal world. He's very bizarre, to the point where you could see somebody turning the film off at that point. You know, that's how crazy nightmarish he is. And I believe he's from another film that I'll review on this YouTube page in the future, a film I really love called House of Malformed Men. I believe it's him. He doesn't have the Asian look. I'm not exactly sure. You know, we have sections of the film, especially when he's around, that also have elements that sound like Italian music. I wanted to mention that. There's some elements of the music that sound like Italian music, and there's some other elements of the music that sound like Middle Eastern music. And so with that dark, horrific type of subtlety, we also have this like kind of across the world type of music in this film that's very, very interesting. as opposed to, let's say, the Stray Cat Rock series or the Pinky Violence films, we do have good and evil in this film. Okay, but we do have struggles with the good to not be evil, or to at the same time going into evil territory to fight evil. Okay, so unlike the Stray Cat Rock series, where kind of everybody's a villain, or as the director of 3 of those films has said, it's not good versus evil, it's opinions. In this film, it's people's opinions. In this film, we have, a standard of good and evil. We have something that's happened in the past, and something that's how the past affects the future. And as I said previously, a very, very bizarre storyline involving a feline, and involving cats and blood drinking and lots of different things. I mean, there is one sequence, now that I think about it, that almost reminded me of Lucio Fulci's Cat in the Brain, in terms of there was a bit of gore. A bit of vicious, weird, eating gore in one of the sections of this film. This is a very hard to pin down type of movie here. It's very atmospheric, and then in a nightmarish, surreal fashion, and then all of a sudden it goes to maybe a standard type of period piece Yakuza tale. And then all of a sudden the story gets a little bit lurid and a little bit perverse. And then it gets back to a standard Yakuza tale. And then we start to get supernatural, or something else. And then it goes back to it. And then we start to get to like this serial killer type of vibe. And then it goes back to it. So there's a lot of very bizarre things. And this is a film that utilizes things that are going to go beyond you, and even in terms of the dragon tattoos on these women's backs. Miko Kaji always looks great, and there's a group of girls in this movie that are very attractive, and I've noticed some other actors in here that I've seen in other Asian cinema. This is Blind Woman's Curse. Here it is, folks, Blind Woman's Curse. Now, in terms of the sexuality, I do want to mention real quick, it's really only topless. Okay, so that's another heads up on that one. Although if you're into legs and shoulders, you're going to love this movie as well, with the women there. So really just beautiful and dark and bizarre. It can almost be in the bizarro genre. Blind Woman's Curse, 1970, starring Miko Kaji. This is put out in an era video. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Blind Woman's Curse. Please feel free to check out all my other reviews and my own personal films at youtube.com/poopydiarrhea. Thank you, and good night.